Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Am Reading finale of 2024. Definitely my finale of 2024 because I didn't get this up quite as soon as I hoped. We are no longer in 2024, if just over the line. So, anyway, these are the books I was reading into the end of the year, and some I'll be continuing with, although I have a day off for the New Year's, and I'm just hoping to wrap things up and move into 2025. But since this is an Am Reading video, I'm going to start, as I always do, by talking about a short story. I am currently reading from the Ocean State Review. We are in Volume 13, Number 1. And the story I read this week is called Hunters in the Snow by Matthew Kirkpatrick. And this is a interesting story. It is about it takes place in a town that seems like it's been roughed up by economic decline. Our main character is a man named Brub. He and two of his buddies, Darbus and Jimmy John, have been laid off some time ago from the shovel factory, which closed due to, well, what they said was environmental concerns. And then other businesses in their town have closed. All three of these men are basically subsisting now on, wives or parents or things like that, and they're barely making ends meet, and they are bitter about it. And they decide to take their revenge on some nearby windmills that happen to be in a forested area. And it seems like they decide to take this revenge at a really inopportune time in the winter where it's really dangerous. I didn't really even realize until we were like decently into the story how dangerous it was. Like Brub, at one point they're crossing a river, stepping on stones, and Brub slips and his foot goes in the water, and like a little while later it's like, it's completely numb. And I'm not sure how seriously I'm supposed to take his ruminations on, whether it could, freeze and, have to be amputated. I don't know. But there is a sense of danger, and it particularly grows when Darbus falls through a hole in the ground and is in a really precarious situation. And yet by this point, apparently, I don't know if the pacing's a little off for me in the story, but by this point they'd been traveling like for an hour or something to get to the windmills, and they don't want to like go back to the truck to get shovels and so forth to dig him out because of the timing, and they want to, get to their mission of basically being Don Quixote and, tilting at windmills, I guess. I don't know. They don't necessarily come off as all that sympathetic by this point. It's kind of like cut your losses. And they actually, and it's kind of, macabre and freaky to think that they leave their friend, and it's a dangerous situation, and they just leave him there thinking they'll come back for him maybe. But even as they're leaving, Brub is, imagining, well, I'll say something nice about him in the eulogy, and I'm thinking this is a very cynical nature. I mean, more cynical than I would have thought at the beginning of the story, even for all of the economic downturn and all of that, but still to abandon a friend like that. And for what purpose? I guess in a way it feels like the story is telling how fruitless all of this is. And maybe, I guess, how desperate people can feel when, the chips feel really stacked against them. But it's pretty obvious in this story, which does have some great atmosphere, I guess, but it's obvious that they're, tilting in the wrong direction. Speaking of short stories, I am also reading through this collection. It's called Displaced Persons by Joan Leegant. It's her second short story collection. I've read her first and her novel. And that's how this book came on my radar and why I chose it for my Hanukkah short story reading project, which we're still in the throes of Hanukkah right now, so I have been filming every night, lighting my menorah, and I review one short story in this ever-growing video. So this is just my teaser that in the next few days I hope to have that video edited and up on the channel, and I'll be discussing 8 of the stories in this book. Next, I took a hard right from anything else I've been talking about in my Am Reading videos, and I read The Vanished Queen by Lisbeth Campbell. This is a book that I chose off of my TBR spin last quarter. It's one of my TBR games that I play. So I'll link to that video down below. And so this is a fantasy novel set in a secondary world. And it's actually rather low fantasy, even though, you know, most secondary worlds I feel like are supposed to be high fantasy. But then again, I even said this in one of my latest author's answer videos that, you know, sometimes all an author wants to do is just create a whole new world, but not necessarily have a lot of magic in it. I feel like the only magic in here is the idea of religion, but you know, it's never confirmed if, you know, the supernatural exists. But there's also like truth sayers, I guess, who can maybe mess with your mind psychologically. But so that's all I have. But anyway, in this world, which is I don't know if I'd say it's medieval. Maybe it's a little beyond that into the modern age, but it's in that sort of milieu. But the Vanished Queen is the wife of the tyrant who is currently ruling this kingdom. And she actually vanished several years, probably a couple decades by this point, before the story begins or the main story begins. In fact, there are interstitial chapters that talk about what happened to her. But the two main characters we're following, one is a scholar called Anza. She, while she was in college, actually stumbled upon poetry and the Diary of the Vanished Queen, which were kind of hidden away in the college library. One of the things about the tyrannical king is how much book banning he does, of course. And so that gives our first insight into like the repressed culture. And later on, her father actually was a captain in the King's Guard who was executed for treason. And that and just, you know, the King's general, you know, affectation lead her to join the resistance. And then the second character we're following is actually the Vanished Queen's second son, Prince Esfar. And he and his brother actually seem rather, you know, overtly, you know, anti-establishment themselves if their father is the establishment. I don't know. I feel like, you know, this was billed as a political novel, and I do feel like there's more politics in it than some other novels, like, you know, in this category. But I kind of wish we'd focus the story in a different direction, because I'm not sure I quite understood all of the politicking or what exactly was the setup of what these princes were doing. In the vein of all tyrants, the king basically pits everybody against each other at all times and is more or less the cause of his ultimate downfall, that, you know, he has no real allies. There's also a war going on in the background, which I guess is a useful way to, you know, keep people aligned with him, like for just their own safety against, you know, another hostile force. I also like that, you know, in the resistance, there's questions of, well, of what resistance means. To a certain degree, there's questions of, you know, will we, you know, actually replace this with anything better? Although there is the leader of the resistance, Sparrow, has a really strict bent about this isn't just about replacing one king, it's replacing the idea of like how a monarchy can, you know, inculcate tyranny. So maybe the two princes, even though, you know, in the story we see that they're sympathetic, maybe they're not the best choice for, you know, the kingdom once the king is gone. But, you know, throughout the book first, the king, even though he's old and weakening, has to have his last hurrah, and he's basically spends a lot of his action playing mind games against his sons, and, you know, he can kill people on a whim and all of that. And I don't know, I think I was a little too distant from the characters in this case. I'm not sure how much I cared about them. And in general, because it's fantasy, I wish there were more world building with fantasy in it. I think there were some interesting ideas. I don't think it was quite black and white, even if the king was kind of a black and white villain. But I did like that Campbell, you know, made some stabs toward slightly more nuanced political commentary, and I read it pretty quickly. It was a fast pace of, you know, people's luck going up and down, and, you know, fights within the resistance and figuring out what happened to the vanished queen and what, Anza's future should be and what her father wanted for her. There's a little bit of a romance between her and Esvar. But all in all, I guess I'm just thinking, it's a 3-star read, I guess. Probably my first of the month at least, which is kind of nice, but relatively average. I actually haven't made as much of a dent as I might have hoped to in The Crane's Dance by Meg Howrey. This is the final book I have to read with regards to my author's backlist project I set for myself this month. And maybe it's good I don't have as much to talk about with this book, because I do want to make a video in January where I compare this book to the other two I read in December. But yes, this is, I think, Howrey's second written book, her sophomore book. It follows two sisters who are in a ballet company together. So we're back in the ballet. Howrey has, past history herself in the ballet, and we're just seeing what that world is like. And she just has a really witty style for her first POV narration characters. That's something I guess I've been picking up from the other books as well. So yeah, it seems like in this book there's a little bit of a schism that, Gwen and Kate were more or less on the same track for a while, but Gwen, the sister, might have had some sort of break and is currently back at home with her parents. And so that might portend, different futures for these two characters going forward. We shall see. I hope I will be able to gather interesting thoughts to talk about in my upcoming video. And finally, I'm a little further into this book, although I'm not quite finished yet. This is The Puzzler's War by Eyal Kless, the second part of a sci-fi dystopian duology that I started earlier in the month. In this story, it feels like it's a little bit of a jump from the last story, I think. A lot of the characters are the same. We're especially following this bromance that was set up quite nicely between a main character, Twinkle Eyes, in the last book, and a man who in the last book he hired to be his guard called Galanak, although these characters are in quite a different situation now than they were even at the end of the last book. There was a big supernatural thing that happened to them that apparently I'm being vague on, as though people are going to read this duology, although I think if you like sort of gritty dystopian that also, it has a lot of, kind of gore stuff, but it also can be kind of lighthearted in its way too, I think you might like this story. This takes place a couple hundred years into the future. We have our post-apocalypse, for a while there was this, new human slash, I think we might have had some supernatural help too with the Tarican society that, loomed large on the world stage for a while, but, they kind of got too big for their britches in a megalomaniac superpower sort of way. But actually what brought the catastrophe that brought the whole world into like the Dark Ages around was that one character who is now appearing in this book was part of a team that made this sort of AI called Cain that was supposed to stand up to the predominant AI called Adam. And this stuff still, within this book mostly feels like it's in the background, like it's I'm not sure, like, it doesn't feel necessarily a threat on its own. What feels like a threat is just regular human behavior and not what the AIs are up to. But I think the storylines are coming together. We're following Mans, who is the character who created Cain, or one of them in the past, that's going to the present. And then we're following Twinkle Eyes again. He and Galanak are looking for the daughter of a character from the last book who is a puzzler in this world, which is basically somebody who can kind of break codes. And then we're also following another agent, Peach. This Peach is a person who has been sort of in a cryo sleep situation, her consciousness, and then she's sort of downloaded into a new body, more or less. And it seems like she hasn't been on the Earth since pre-catastrophe, so this is all pretty darn alarming for her, how far humanity has fallen. And that's interesting ruminations in and of itself, and there's some like interesting world building coming out of it. I feel like the world building is a lot more, I don't know, grand in this one. Like the last one felt a little more driven on a particular character and his journey. And we're still following characters in this book, but I feel like the world itself, you know, I guess Kless is feeling like he could take a step back, and the world is coming into a little more focus itself, and it does seem like, you know, there's forces gathering in the background. We're going to have to see if, you know, we can save humanity from this, you know, dark ages we've brought upon ourselves or not. And if, you know, this young puzzler will be the key. We had another young puzzler in the last book that might have been the key, and now we're on to the next one, I guess. But it's a duology, so maybe it'll be her. I don't think there's any books past this one, but yeah, I'm enjoying this and looking forward to continuing to read it. And that about covers it for me now. I feel like I'm starting the year already on a little bit of a back foot. There's a lot of videos I'm hoping to cram into January if I can. And the next one, I believe, should be my end of quarter wrap-up for my writing goals. So stay tuned for that in the imminent future, because more will be coming down the pike. I hope you are all having a wonderful, good start to the new year with your reading and otherwise. It's been so fun watching all the BookTube videos about, you know, favorite books and anticipated books and, you know, wrapping up end of year thoughts. I have some of those lined up as well for January now that the, you know, year is over. So should be a fun way to spend, you know, the first month, you know, post-holidays, you know. Reading just feels so, you know, exciting right now as, you know, we're in this particular stage of, you know, endings and beginnings. But anyway, I hope you're all doing well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you next time.